Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, you're joining us as we journey back, way back, to the Late Cretaceous period in Utah. Our focus, it's this really fascinating duck-billed dinosaur unearthed relatively recently, Adelolophus suchisoni.
That's the one.
And we have the scientific description right here. It covers, well, pretty much everything from how it was found, its name, what it looked like based on the fossils.
Right. Its place in the family tree, the whole ancient world it lived in.
So our mission today is to really dig into what makes Adelolophus special. What does its existence tell us about life millions of years ago?
Exactly. Think of us as paleo detectives, maybe,
Yeah.
using these fossil clues.
Okay.
And the main piece of the puzzle for Adelolophus, it's a broken upper jawbone, the maxilla.
Just a jawbone.
Primarily, yes. But from this single piece, you'd be amazed what scientists have managed to figure out about this creature and sort of its place in the grand dinosaur story.
Okay, let's unpack how this discovery actually happened then. Because it wasn't like, someone tripping over a whole skeleton in the desert.
No, not quite like that. Not at all. The story really starts back in 1973. A location rich in fossils in the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument area was first documented then.
Right.
But it wasn't until 1999, quite a bit later, that John Howard Hutchison and his team revisited this specific site. And that's when they made the crucial find.
Which was the jawbone.
The broken maxilla, yeah. Belonging to what they could tell was a lambeosaurine hadrosaur.
Okay, lambeosaurine hadrosaur, let's just clarify that. So duck-billed dinosaurs, they're hadrosaurs, right? Big group, plant eaters, distinctive bills.
Correct. Very diverse group.
And the lambeosaurines specifically are the ones known for those hollow crests on their heads.
That's the subgroup, yeah. Often quite elaborate crests.
So finding this single jawbone, even though it's broken, it caused a bit of a stir. Sounds like people recognized it was important pretty early on.
Oh, definitely. There was a paper back in 2013, and it specifically highlighted this maxilla as the oldest lambeosaur material ever found in North America.
Wow, the oldest.
Yeah. And even then, the researchers could see it had unique characteristics. They suspected it pointed to, a new species, but they didn't formally name it right away. They wanted to be sure.
Right, so they knew they had something significant, a new piece, but they needed to sort of confirm its spot before putting a label on it.
Precisely. Good way to put it. The official unveiling, the name and everything, that came in a 2014 study. That's when it was formally described and named Adelolophus suchisoni.
Okay, let's break down that name. Dinosaur names are always interesting. Adelolophus. That means unknown crest.
It does.
That's intriguing, right? Especially for a lambeosaurine, which, as you said, we usually picture with these big head crests.
Well, what's fascinating is the name highlights a key mystery, really. The jawbone itself, the maxilla we have. It doesn't show any direct evidence of a crest.
Huh.
But because Adelolophus is classified as a lambeosaurine based on other features of the jaw, it's considered highly probable, almost certain, that it did have some kind of crest. Just not one that left its mark on this particular bone fragment that survived.
Gotcha. And the second part, Hutchisoni.
That's a tribute, and a well-deserved one, to John Howard Hutchison, the paleontologist who was key to its discovery.
Nice. So the unknown crest is like a nod to what they strongly suspect was there, but haven't found direct fossil proof of yet. And this specific jawbone, UCMP 152028, that's the holotype.
That's the one, the holotype. It's the reference specimen, the standard that defines the whole species. Any future fossils thought to be Adelolophus will get compared back to this specific bone.
Right. Makes sense.
And just to add a bit more detail, a 2016 study managed to pinpoint its origin even more precisely within the rock layers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they placed it right at the lower end of the upper member of the Wahweap Formation, which is important geologically because it might help fill in some gaps in our understanding of the timeline for that formation.
Okay, so like adding a more precise date stamp. What about other stuff found nearby? Any other dinosaur bits and pieces at the same site?
Yes, actually. There were fragmentary remains of other hadrosaurs found right there. Some suggesting, pretty large animals.
Bigger than Adelolophus? Or maybe parts of Adelolophus?
Well, that's the thing. Without more complete bones that have really clear diagnostic features, it's impossible to say for sure if any of those other bits belong to Adelolophus.
Ah, okay.
So for now, our solid understanding really comes from this one, albeit incomplete, but very informative maxilla.
Okay, so let's really dive into that bone then. What can this single bone tell us? We know it's a lambeosaurine, the crested kind. What specific features make this maxilla stand out?
Well, first off, the overall shape, it's sort of triangular. That shape itself is a strong indicator it's a lambeosaur.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Even though it's clearly a lambeosaurine, its maxilla actually shares more similarities with the Parasaurolophs.
Parasaurolophus, the ones with the big, long, tube-like crests.
Exactly those ones. More similarities to them than to the other main group of lambeosaurines, the ones with the more helmet-like or cask-like crests.
Huh. So it's kind of a mix, or something that doesn't quite fit neatly in the established boxes.
A little bit, yeah. It has some unique features. Several, actually.
Like what are the key things about this jaw?
Okay. One of the most obvious is something called the medial wall. Think of it as like a ridge on the upper inside edge of the jawbone.
Got it.
In Adelolophus, this wall is really tall, particularly high at both the front and back ends of the bone fragment we have, almost like a crest on the jawbone itself.
Whoa.
In contrast, other lambeosaurines, the cask-headed ones, they have a much shorter medial wall. And even Parasaurolophus has something more intermediate in height.
So Adelolophus really cranks up the height on that ridge. Okay. What else?
Another thing is the dorsal process. That's a bony extension that points upwards from the maxilla.
Mm-hmm.
In Adelolophus, this process is relatively rounded in shape. Again, that's more like what you see in Parasaurolophs.
Different from the other lambeosaurines.
Yeah, in those, it tends to be sharply tapered, more like a point. And furthermore, even though the connecting bone, the jugal, isn't preserved, the spot where it would have connected.
The articulation point.
Exactly. That articulation suggests it had a Parasaurolophus-like jugal bone, too. It's like seeing the shadow of a missing piece based on how its neighbor is shaped.
That's some clever detective work by the paleontologists. Seriously.
It really is. Then there's the palatine process. Another bony projection. This one connects to the palatine bone, another part of the skull roof.
Okay.
In Adelolophus, this process is quite large, and it sits pretty high up on the maxilla. In most other lambeosaurs, it's typically smaller and positioned lower down.
So taller ridge, rounder projection, bigger connection point, way up high. What about the toothy part, the bottom edge?
Ah, yes. That's another distinct feature. The bottom edge of the Adelolophus maxilla, right along the tooth row, is described as rugose.
Rugose, meaning?
Wrinkled, rough, bumpy.
Mm-hmm.
It has these little protrusions. This is quite different from the smooth condition you see in its North American relatives, including Parasaurolophus.
Huh. Even Parasaurolophus is smooth there.
Yep. And one last thing. There's this unique sort of thickened ridge that runs along the maxilla from that jugal articulation point over to the palatine process.
And that's unique.
Totally unique. It hasn't been seen in any other known lambeosaurs.
Wow. Okay, so even from this one incomplete bone, that's a whole list of unique traits. It definitely sounds like it earned its spot as a distinct species.
Absolutely.
Now, how does it fit into the bigger picture, the family tree? Where does Adelolophus sit among all its crested cousins?
Well, as we said, it's definitely in the Lambeosaurinae subfamily. That's within the bigger Hadrosauridae family.
Right, the duckbills.
But to get more precise, scientists use these things called phylogenetic analyses. It's basically building a detailed family tree using specific anatomical features to figure out who's most closely related to whom.
Okay.
And these studies, particularly one from 2021, have placed Adelolophus within a specific tribe called Parasaurolophini.
Parasaurolophine, so grouped right in with Parasaurolophus and its closest kin.
Exactly. Makes sense given the similarities we just talked about.
Who else is in that group? Who are its closest relatives according to this tree?
Well, based on that 2021 study, its closest relatives are thought to be Parasaurolophus itself, naturally, and also another really interesting dinosaur called Tyrannosaurus.
Tyrannosaurus, I feel like I've heard that name. Where's it from?
Asia. Which is fascinating, suggesting connections across continents back then.
Wow.
And more recent, more extensive studies have basically reinforced this placement in Parasaurolophini. Some even suggest a particularly close relationship with Adelolophus.
Adelolophus, another North American one?
Yes, another crested hadrosaur from Mexico, actually. Also relatively recently discovered.
Okay, so the picture's becoming clearer. It's firmly in that Parasaurolophus branch of the family. That's really cool, seeing the potential link to an Asian dinosaur, too. Highlights how different the world map was.
It really does. These animals were clearly moving around.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. This dinosaur didn't live in a vacuum, right? What do we know about the world Adelolophus lived in, its paleo environment?
Right. So Adelolophus lived during the early Campanian age. That's part of the Late Cretaceous period.
And the rocks it was found in?
The upper member of the Wall-Whip Formation, as we mentioned. Geologically, this part of the formation is mostly mudstone and sandstone layers.
And what does that tell us about the landscape? Was it like the Utah we see today, deserty?
Not at all. Very different. The environment of the upper member, based on the rocks and other fossils, was tidal.
Tidal, like coastal.
Yes, with rivers meandering across the landscape. And interestingly, compared to the older, lower parts of the Wall-Whip Formation, this upper member shows signs of a much stronger marine influence.
Ah, the sea was moving in.
Exactly. The Western Interior Seaway, that huge inland sea that split North America in two back then, was encroaching, moving westward.
Okay.
So this created brackish, sort of estuarine conditions where Adelolophus lived, a mix of salt water and fresh water.
So a coastal plain, basically. Rivers meeting the sea. Sounds pretty dynamic.
Definitely dynamic. And while the overall climate seems to have been pretty wet, probably subtropical,
Yeah.
the evidence also suggests there was a distinct dry season each year.
Oh, okay. So not wet all the time.
No. So Adelolophus and everything else living there would have had to cope with both wetter periods and potentially quite dry spells.
Adaptable creatures. And who are these other creatures? What else shared this ancient slice of Utah with Adelolophus?
Well, the fossil site where the Adelolophus holotype came from, it's actually revealed a pretty diverse little ecosystem.
Cool. Like what?
Lots of fish remains, for starters. Things like indeterminate sturgeon and gar. Also a large type of bowfin fish called Melvius.
Okay, fish. What else?
Turtles. Turtles were apparently everywhere. Several species of an extinct family called banid turtles were common. Arvinochles, Denizenemes, Neranculus.
Wow, lots of turtles.
Yeah, plus another type, Basilimes, and some fragments of soft-shelled turtles, trinichids.
So a very turtle-rich environment. Any other reptiles? Maybe crocodiles?
Some rare bits of Mesosuchians. That's an ancient group related to modern crocs. They aren't commonly found in this particular formation, so even finding fragments is significant.
Okay. And the big question, other dinosaurs?
Yep. They found fragmentary remains of a tyrannosaurid, a meat eater.
A tyrannosaur. Like T-Rex or something related.
Related. We know another tyrannosaur, Lathranax, lived in the area, but earlier in the middle, member of the formation. It's impossible to say right now if these fragments belong to Lathranax or maybe something else.
Okay. The mystery predator.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And we also know that another plant eater, the ceratopsid dinosaur Machairoceratops, was around.
A horned dinosaur. What did it look like?
Machairoceratops had these really distinctive curved horns coming off the back of its neck frill, so it definitely shared the landscape with Adelolophus.
So Adelolophus was living alongside fish, tons of turtles, ancient croc relatives, possibly a big tyrannosaur lurking around, and horned dinosaurs. That paints a really vivid picture, doesn't it? A bustling late Cretaceous world.
It really does. And Adelolophus, even from just its jawbone, it gives us such a crucial piece of that picture.
Yeah.
What's so key is that it's the oldest known lambeosaur from North America. And its anatomy, that unique mix of features, some like the casque-headed types, others more like the tube-crested Parasaurolophus, gives us, valuable clues about how these iconic crested dinosaurs started evolving.
And it was doing all this in that dynamic coastal environment.
Right, thriving in that mix of fresh and salt water, dealing with seasons. It just highlights how adaptable life was back then.
Okay, so just to recap for everyone listening, Adelolophus, this unknown crested duckbill from Utah, right? Late Cretaceous. Its discovery, mostly from one broken jawbone, reveals it's the earliest North American lambeosaurine we know of, and it's got this surprising mix of features, especially leaning towards Parasaurolophus.
Yep.
And it lived in this changeable coastal estuarine world alongside fish, turtles, other dinos, offering this amazing window onto life near the edge of that ancient inland sea.
That sums it up perfectly. It really shows how much you can learn from, well, sometimes just a fragment, if you look closely and put it in context.
Which really leads me to this final thought. If our whole understanding of Adelolophus right now comes mainly from this one jawbone, what other secrets about this unknown crested dinosaur and the world it lived in might still be locked away in those rocks out there in the Grand Staircase Escalante? Makes you wonder what else is waiting, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's the constant excitement in paleontology, isn't it? The story's never finished. Every new find could add a whole new chapter or even make us rethink the chapters we thought we knew.
Definitely something to think about. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we explored the really intriguing story of Adelolophus hutchisoni.
My pleasure.
Until our next deep dive, keep asking questions.